They spat on my dignity and laughed like it was entertainment. That night in Seabrook, I stopped being the man who forgave and became the man who kept receipts. This is a story of how a lifetime of quiet sacrifice turned into a single, deliberate decision that changed everything. Not with fury, but with documents, signatures, and silence. I will show you how I took back what was mine without shouting, and why the gentlest voice can be the most dangerous. Stay with me. This is the moment a father became something his son never expected. If you're watching, tell me where you are in the comments and subscribe so more people hear this true story. My name is Walter Hughes. I live in Seabrook, a small town where everyone thinks they know one another's business, but nobody really knows the quiet things a man keeps in his drawers. I worked with my hands my whole life. Brick by brick, bolt by bolt, I built things that still stand when storms come. Those years left me tired in places most people don't notice. Knuckles stiff from winters on scaffolding, the small scars on my palms from rusty nails, the cough that wakes me sometimes at night. But those were badges of a life I thought mattered. I thought they meant something to my son. His name was Adam when he was a boy who climbed into my lap with scraped knees and a face full of wonder. He still looked like that in the photos on my kitchen shelf. The little boy with his head on my shoulder, gummy smile, and missing front tooth. I kept that photo carefully, folded in the wallet I carry for years. I believe then that love is the thing that never unravels if you tie it right. When his mother, my Ruth, died, I became everything for him. Cook, cleaner, paymaster, comfort. I skipped new shoes and meals so he could go to college, worked overtime when the rent was due, co-signed his first car and then his mortgage. He married a woman named Sophia who was bright and concerned with style. At first she was polite, folded laundry with me, told me what a gift I'd been. Later, when the gifts I gave became the standard of their lifestyle, the gratitude faded. I explained away the first small slights as stress, the longer silences as busyness. I told myself patience was love. I told myself it would be repaid in some quiet way when the time was right. Years passed. Their visits became less frequent, more transactional. When they came, it was to trade updates like receipts. I'd bought the groceries they ate at my table, paid when they ran out, fixed a boiler when it broke, and nodded when Adam spoke over me friends on my own sofa. He learned to spend and not to thank, to expect and not to acknowledge. Little things accumulated. A look, a parted mouth when I entered a room, a joke that landed on me like a hook. It happened one Sunday. The house was warm with candles and the smell of roasted chicken. Sophia had invited friends over, and Adam, newly promoted and newly proud, wanted to show what he'd earned. His co-worker laughed the loudest. His wife clapped in the places she thought would sparkle, and their children, Lily and Ben, sat picking at vegetables with the cracking impatience only kids have. I sat at the head of the table like a relic in a museum exhibit, admired for my antiquity, useful for props, never as a person. The jabs began like small stones. A barb about my sweater, another about my old-fashioned way of doing things. I forced a smile. My hands dampened the napkin. Then Adam leaned forward. He spoke to the table like a man making a final point. "You know, Dad," he said, slow and loud enough for friends to hear. "Maybe it's time you accept that some folks don't have a place in the future. Retirement's for people who can step aside." Laughter like a wave filled the room. His wife exhaled a high, glassy giggle. I stayed quiet. I'd learned to hold myself the way you hold a fragile vase. Steady, not to drop it, though inside something cracked. The thing I remember with a clarity that always surprises me is not the words themselves, but the way he spat. It was sudden. The air made a soft, wet sound when it landed on my cheek. For a second the world stood in a photograph. There was Adam's face, flushed with triumph. Sophia's half-hidden smile, the neighbor's open-mouthed surprise, Lily's fork slipping from small fingers, Ben looking between adults like a judge who doesn't yet have the rule book. I felt the warmth of it slide down my skin and into my collar, as though an insult had a temperature. The room froze. Then, like someone snapping a rubber band, the laughter resumed. That sound, a pack of wolves in polite clothing, cut deeper than any blow I had expected. I didn't stand up and shout. I didn't slap him. I wiped my face with the cloth napkin in slow, careful motions. as if I had all the time in the world. I could have lectured, cried, begged. I did none of those things. In that silence, something in me shifted from a man who forgave to a man who kept count. I had carried him for years. Now I pressed my palm to the ledger what that carrying looked like. When I returned home that night, I did not sleep. The house that had always been mine, the place where Ruth had laughed and Adam had learned to whittle sticks, felt foreign. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, a lamp on, a mug of coffee gone cold beside stacks of paper I had kept for years. Receipts, mortgage documents, bank statements, canceled checks. They lived in neat folders because I had always believed in order. I laid them out and remembered line by line where each dollar had gone. The tuition payment here, the car deposit there, the mortgage supplement each month when Adam's earnings were thin. I wasn't a victim of overspending. I was a man who had given nearly everything to keep his child's life from breaking on a rock. Nothing wrong with that, until the night your child spits on you at dinner. I thought of all I had told myself. Patience is love. Sacrifice is duty. It had been true and noble, until grace was taken for granted. The math was simple. If you give and never set borders, people stop seeing your giving as a choice. It becomes a pipe that runs forever and dries out your well. So I made a promise to myself that did not look like revenge. It looked like paperwork. It looked like patience turned to planning. I would not humiliate him as he had humiliated me. I would not return his cruelty in kind. I would use the tools that had weight and the law's slow, clean teeth. I would make the silence speak in a language he understood. Consequence. I slept finally when the sky grew pale, and I woke early, colder but clearer. I dressed in the same old coat. They'd mocked and left the house as if nothing had happened. I took with me the small box I had kept for years in the bottom drawer, the deeds, the account statements, the agreements with signatures that still bore my name. I walked to the lawyer's office in town, not with a shout, but with a folder and a patience honed through decades of hard labor. I sat down with Mr. Peterson in a small office that smelled of old books and leather. He didn't need my explanation. The look in my eyes did it for me. I laid the folder on the desk. Deeds, the original mortgage papers, canceled checks marked mortgage supplement, the stamp receipts I kept for tuition payments, the bank passbooks with my name and signatures, and the note Ruth and I had scribbled years ago about keeping things in trust until the children stand on their own feet. He opened them carefully as if handling something fragile and important, which, to me, they were. We moved deliberately. He drafted the documents while I watched, each sentence a quiet unmaking. Revocation of any joint account privileges, formal withdrawal of any standing authorizations, cancellation of the informal arrangements I'd made to pay their bills. We prepared an agreement to list the property for sale under my name. Not in some dramatic auction, but a clean sale orchestrated to be indisputable. Mr. Peterson suggested language to avoid loopholes. I signed where he asked, my hand steady. There was no shouting, no drama. Just ink and the law doing what laughter could not. Next, I went to bank. The manager knew me from years of deposits and small, polite conversations. He looked surprised when I asked to see him, and a little worried when I slid the notarized papers across the counter. I need immediate action, I said. Freeze access to any accounts where my name appears for joint privileges. Close the cards. Redirect automatic payments that I have been authorizing to go elsewhere. He complied with the professionalism of someone trained to respect legal documents. Phone calls were made. Stamps were affixed. Those small sounds, the click of a keyboard, the snap of a stamp, felt louder than any argument I could have had across a dinner table. I called a real estate agent I'd used years back and asked for discretion. We agreed on a plan. List the house, prepare the paperwork, schedule movers to inventory and protect valuable items, but do it in a way that would look routine to anyone who glanced from the porch. The agent understood how to move quickly when a seller wanted things to proceed without spectacle. I signed a power of sale agreement and instructed Mr. Peterson to hold all notifications until the transfers were legally in place. The mechanics of it were slow in some parts and fast in others. There are laws that must be observed, witness signatures that must be notarized, and yet there are also forms you can file that start the engine rolling while the rest falls into place. I felt none of the triumph I imagined others might expect. What I felt was clean and tired, like wiping a wound and knowing it will scar. I arranged the accounts that had been paying their mortgage and the BMW lease to be redirected, not canceled piecemeal, not with a tantrum, but with legal precision. Stop the flow, move the funds to a secure account in my control, and set the mortgage company a single, final payment to avoid unnecessary foreclosure drama for the children. I was not cruel. I was finishing business I'd been postponing for far too long. That afternoon, I walked back home with the folder lighter than when I'd left. The house looked the same from the street. Curtains pulled, toys in the yard, the same mailbox. I paused at the gate and felt the odd sensation of being an outsider in a place I'd made. Inside, I moved slowly through rooms I'd kept tidy for them, locking cupboards I had never locked, putting certain personal items in a box I would take with me. I left no note. The keys went in an envelope on the mantel, not as provocation, but as punctuation. The men and women I had helped build their lives would have to face the work they had been shirking. I had done my part to make sure the consequences were clear and legal. Before night fell, the first messages began. Short, sharp. Dad, what is going on? Check the bank. You can't do this. I didn't respond. I walked out the back door, the same way I had left 1,000 times to fetch nails and paint. But this time I did not return. I booked a motel, a plain room near the highway, and slept like a man with his hands finally unburdened. The phone lit up all night, frantic calls and pleading, then threats. At some point a neighbor texted me, "Adam's in the driveway. He says the bank told him you acted yesterday." I poured coffee and watched the morning come, feeling a strange, steady calm. By mid-morning the house was a scene I had imagined in careful, legal detail. Adam found the letter from the bank first, a polite, formal statement that his access had been revoked and the joint account closed. The tone of the letter made the reality hit harder, because it was civilized and final. He tore through drawers looking for checkbooks and cards that would no longer work. Then he found the notice from a mortgage company confirming a transfer of payment instructions and a new contact person. My name, my number. Panic made his voice go high when he called me, but I didn't answer. He rang Mr. Peterson. The lawyer's office confirmed everything came through as it should. The sounds of his demands and entreaties drifted like bad weather across town. The lawyer's voice remained calm and procedural on the other end. What he did next, the running to the bank, the shouting at clerks, the pounding on my door, was exactly the kind of raw scene he had always imagined would break me. Instead, it only underscored the truth I had accepted. The bank teller said, with sympathetic professionalism, that the transactions were final and the accounts were secure. The real estate agent had already scheduled the initial open house preparations. Men with clipboards came quietly the next day to catalog large items for sale and to photograph of rooms. Movers were contacted to be ready should the sale proceed. The listing was discreet, handled with the same efficiency I had used when I built things. Measure twice, cut once. I steered clear of the confrontations. I never wanted to give him the satisfaction of seeing me reduced to pleading or rage. When his calls turned from angry to pleading, I finally answered one in the motel parking lot, my voice steady in the phone speaker. "Adam," he said, voice cracking. "This is a mistake. Please, I need you." He begged in ways he never had when he wanted money. I listened to him fumble for the words that never came at dinner. I told him simply, "You'll need to make your own way." He sputtered, then said things I half expected. Threats about lawyers, about family shame, about ruin. I told him matter-of-factly that every move I'd made was within my rights, and that I had no interest in hurting the children. He couldn't accept that I would be methodical, not vengeful. He wanted fireworks. I had closed the circuit and walked away. That afternoon, I put the last important box in the trunk of my car. In it, I put the few things I truly wanted. Ruth's silver locket, the photograph of Adam with his missing front tooth, the small hammer I used in quieter years to teach him how to drive a nail straight. I left an envelope with the keys on the mantel and closed the door for the last time. From the sidewalk, I watched them move through the house in precise, disbelieving motions. Searching, slamming, pleading. A moving van stopped at the curb. Not the kind that takes everything at once, but a professional crew ready to protect items the sale might require. I did not stay to watch the humiliation crest. I had already seen too much of it. Instead, I drove east until the town signs thinned and the sky opened. On the road, I felt lighter and oddly young. The plan I'd executed wasn't petty theft or spectacle. It was a reclamation of the life I'd poured into others and into myself. I did not gloat. I had no appetite for victory dances. What came next was a clean slate and the long, slow work of learning how to live without being needed to prop someone else up. When night fell, I pulled into a small motel off the highway, the kind of place you stop at when you need the world to stop noticing you. I made a coffee and watched a black and white late-night movie, my paperwork folded and safe in my bag. The phone buzzed with messages. Threats from Adam, a call from Caroline that turned into sobbing, a text from Lily asking Grandpa, "Are we okay?" I read it twice and then set the phone face down. The children's messages echoed in my chest differently than their parents'. I felt a tenderness of them that had nothing to do with the money. I had made a decision that would change all their lives, but I had also left a path for their education and medical needs to continue. I had never wanted them to suffer unnecessarily. I wanted the adults to face the consequences of not parenting. Before sleep I sat on the motel bed and opened the wallet where I had first stored the folded photograph. For a long time, I stared at that young, laughing face and let a small, private ache pass through me. Then I put the photo back and closed the wallet. The next morning, I bought a bus ticket to a place I'd never visited, a coastal town the travel agent suggested would be quiet this time of year. There was an option to stay or to go back and fight in the courtrooms. I chose to go. The fight had already been fought with ink and hearings and signatures. My part, the quiet part that exhausted me more than any scaffold ever had, was finished. I didn't know then how the town would talk, how neighbors would choose sides, or whether Adam would ever look at me with anything but shame. I only knew this. I had turned humiliation into a map that led away from the people who had made me a doormat, and toward a life I could finally live for myself. By the time the movers finished their first sweep through the house, news had already started spreading through Seabrook. Small towns don't whisper, they broadcast. People talk over fences, in grocery aisles, at the post office. They pretend they're sharing concern, but what they're really sharing is fuel. And this story, well, it had all the elements of a fire. By sunrise the next day, 3 neighbors already accidentally walked past a house. Some stood with their arms crossed, shaking their heads. Others pretended to water their lawns while staring. I know because one of them, Eddie from across the street, called me at the motel. "Walter, people are saying movers came to your place. Everything okay?" It was strange hearing concern in his voice. He'd been one of the people who'd seen Adam speak to me like an inconvenience at neighborhood gatherings. But now that he saw the consequence, he wasn't sure who to defend. "It's taken care of," I told him. "I'm fine." He wanted more. People always want more. But I gave him nothing except the truth in its simplest form. Peace doesn't require explanations. By that afternoon, the entire town had chosen sides. Some thought I had finally gone senile. Some thought Adam had pushed me too far. Some thought I deserved better. And a few said the line that stayed with me. He didn't think the old man would ever fight back. They weren't wrong. I had fought back just silently. The children didn't understand what was happening at first. Lily was 11, old enough to feel tension, too young to understand its source. She called me from a number I didn't recognize. "Grandpa, Daddy and Mommy are fighting. Did you do something?" "They said you did something. Are you mad at us?" Her voice cracked in the middle. I sat on the motel bed staring at the wall, feeling that familiar weight. Not regret, but responsibility. I love that girl. I love Ben too. None of this was their fault. "No, sweetheart," I said quietly. "I'm not mad at you. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have to fix things that should have been fixed long ago. Will you come back?" Her question hit harder than anything Adam had ever said to me. I didn't lie. "Not right now, but I will always care about you. That doesn't change." She sniffled. "Okay, I miss you. I miss you too. I hung up before my voice could betray the steel I had built around my heart. Children shouldn't have to pay for the arrogance of their parents. That's why I had arranged with Mr. Peterson to set aside restricted funds for their needs, medical, education, essentials, but nothing that could be touched or misused by Adam or Sophia. The children would not suffer. Only the adults would. Meanwhile, Adam's downfall began not with losing the house, but with the town realizing he had never owned it. People began comparing notes. The Martins said, "Didn't Walter always pay the water bill?" The Myers added, "Didn't we see him fixing the boiler last winter?" Someone else mentioned, "I thought Adam borrowed money from him. Wasn't there something about a car loan?" One by one, the truth emerged in fragments. Adam wasn't a successful homeowner. He pretended to be. He wasn't financially secure. He wasn't the provider he claimed. He was a man living on a mountain built from someone else's bones, and that mountain had just been removed. Humiliation is one thing when it comes from a father. It's another thing entirely when it comes from an entire town. By the second afternoon, he was pacing the driveway like an animal in a shrinking cage. His co-workers drove by and didn't stop. Some looked away, embarrassed to have ever believed his stories. His wife's parents came and left within 10 minutes, and not quietly. Sophia screamed on the lawn. He yelled back. The neighbors watched behind curtains. I didn't need revenge. The truth was doing the work for me. That night, I walked along the shoreline near the motel. The ocean was dark and vast, the sky filled with quiet stars, something I hadn't seen with peace in years. I breathed, slowly, deeply. The cold air felt clean. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking of Adam. I was thinking of myself. Who was I now without the constant weight of responsibility? Without being the provider? Without being the man holding someone else's life together? Some men fear losing purpose. I feared never having one of my own. But standing near the water, hearing the waves collapse against the sand, I felt something settle inside me. I wasn't losing purpose. I was reclaiming it. The next morning, I would travel farther, away from Seabrook, away from the noise, away from the man who had spat on me thinking it would break me. He didn't know that moment had given me a clarity sharper than anger. By the fourth morning, the cracks in Adam's life weren't just visible. They were spreading like fractures in glass, each one connecting to another, threatening to shatter everything he thought he controlled. I was sitting in a small cafe near the motel when the storm finally broke for him. I didn't witness it in person, but Seabrook delivers news faster than the morning paper. The cafe owner, an old fisherman named Raoul, came by with my coffee and said, "Heard there was shouting outside your old place this morning. Bad shouting. Wife's gone hysterical." I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I sipped my coffee and waited. The truth always finds its way to you, without being chased. Half an hour later, I got a clearer version from a woman who had lived 3 houses down from me for 20 years. She knew everything that happened in the neighborhood. Not because she was nosy, but because people told her things. They always do. She sat down at my table without asking. "Walter, honey, your son's house was like a war zone this morning." I stayed silent. She took that as encouragement to continue. Sophia packed her things. 2 suitcases, a bag full of clothes, the kids' backpacks. She was crying. He was screaming. Everyone could hear it. "Why?" I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. She leaned in, lowering her voice. She said he lied to her. About everything. Their friends know now. The house, the bills, the account she kept alive for years. She told him she's not going down with him. That she didn't sign up to be homeless because of his pride. Then she left. That was the moment the balance tipped. People assume the worst pain comes from losing money or property. But no, the worst pain comes when the people you thought would stand beside you walk away without looking back. Before noon, Sophia drove off with the children. Before evening, Adam's life had shrunk into a single, lonely ring of shame. Neighbors avoided him. His in-laws blamed him. Co-workers whispered behind his back. His friends stopped returning calls. He called me 16 times that day. I didn't answer. On the 16th voicemail, his voice cracked. Dad, please, please call me. I messed up. I know I messed up. Just talk to me. There was no anger in his voice anymore. No arrogance. No bitterness. Just the hollow echo of a man who finally realized what he'd destroyed with one careless moment of cruelty. But understanding doesn't erase consequences. Not anymore. I left the cafe and walked toward the pier, letting the wind push against my coat. The sea was restless that day, waves rising and falling with the kind of rhythm that makes you think of time, and how it moves whether you're ready or not. As I watched the water, I realized something important. I didn't hate my son. I didn't even wish him pain. But I could no longer carry the burden of being disrespected by the very man I raised. Some lessons in life come gently. Some come through whispered advice or quiet correction. But some require a fall so hard that the ground itself teaches you the truth. And Adam had finally hit the ground. Later that evening, I learned what happened next through another phone call. Not from him, but from Ben, my grandson. His voice was small, trembling. "Grandpa, Daddy's crying. I've never seen him cry before. Mommy left. We're staying at Aunt Melissa's. Daddy said you won't pick up." My heart tightened. "Are you okay, Ben?" "Yes, but he keeps saying he's sorry." "Is he talking about you?" "Yes," I said gently. "He is." "Are you mad at him?" I took a long breath. "No, buddy. I just needed time." There was silence, then his fragile whisper, "Can you come back?" I closed my eyes. "I can't come back yet, but I will always love you. And your sister. That will never change." He sniffled. "Okay. I love you, Grandpa." When the call ended, I sat on the bench for a long time, listening to the waves crash against the rocks. Children always see the truth before adults do. They see pain. They see love. They see the cracks we try to hide. But this journey wasn't about punishing Adam. It was about ending the cycle he had forced me into, about reclaiming myself, about giving him the one lesson he never learned. Respect cannot be bought, demanded, or inherited. It must be earned. The next day, I packed my suitcase again. It was time to move further, not out of fear, but to finish the distance I needed to heal. But before I left that motel, I made one final decision that would shape everything that came after. A decision about what to do with the money. A decision about who would inherit the life I had worked for. A decision that would bypass Adam and acknowledge the only people who had never disrespected me. I didn't leave Seabrook out of bitterness. I left because I needed distance to breathe, think, and rebuild the dignity that had been chipped away over years of silent sacrifice. But even as I packed my small suitcase at the motel, I knew the story between Adam and me wasn't finished. Not yet. There was still one final thread connecting us. My will. For years, out of habit and hope, I had listed Adam as my sole heir. Everything I owned, the house I built, the accounts I preserved, the savings I collected dollar by dollar, would one day have gone to him. But inheritance is not just money. It is responsibility. It is gratitude. It is legacy. And he had shown me he carried none of those. So before I left town, I returned to the lawyer's office one last time. The secretary recognized me immediately. When she saw the documents under my arm, she stood aside and let me pass without a word. Mr. Peterson looked up from his desk as I entered. "You're back sooner than I expected." "I have one more request," I said quietly. He nodded and closed the folder he had been working on. "Tell me." I placed the old one on his desk, the one with Adam's name printed boldly, confidently, undeservingly. "I want to rewrite everything." "For who?" he asked gently. I paused, then answered with the only truth that still mattered. My grandchildren, Ben and Lila, 2 small souls who had never disrespected me. 2 children who hugged me without expecting anything. 2 hearts untouched by the arrogance of their parents. I didn't want my legacy to become fuel for Adam's pride. I wanted it to become a foundation for the only innocent people left in this story. So I sat across from Mr. Peterson as he drafted the new will. Every word, every clause, every condition crafted with care. Adam inherited nothing. Not the money, not the property, not the accounts, not even my tools. His children, however, inherited everything, to be held in trust until they were old enough to receive it without influence. College funds, housing funds, savings, insurance payouts, investment accounts that had quietly grown over decades. Everything I had ever worked for. But there was more. I added one final clause, a condition, a simple one. Adam Bennett shall not have access, authority, or control over any funds designated for the beneficiaries. At no time shall he serve as guardian of the estate. In the event the beneficiaries are minors, a third-party trustee shall be appointed. Mr. Peterson looked up. This is firm. It has to be. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll file it today. With a single signature, the future shifted, not out of spite, but out of protection. For them, not for him. On my way out of town, I walked once more past a house I had built with my own hands, the house that no longer belonged to him. It looked strange now, empty, hollow, a shell waiting for new owners. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. The new family had arrived early. 2 children were running on the lawn, laughing, chasing each other in circles. A boy around Ben's age tripped and fell, then burst into laughter. His mother called out gently, "You okay, buddy?" He nodded, dusting off his knees. A simple, wholesome moment. A moment that reminded me of why I left, and why I could never return. Behind me, the engine of an old Honda sputtered. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Adam. He had spotted me. His footsteps approached slowly, hesitantly. "Dad." Just one word. A broken word. A word that carried regret, shame, disbelief. But I didn't answer. Not because I hated him. Not because I wanted him to hurt. Not because I enjoyed his downfall. But because conversation cannot heal what disrespect destroyed. Respect is not a request. It is a foundation. His was gone. So I kept walking. His voice cracked behind me. "Please don't leave like this." I didn't turn around. Because the truth was simple. I had already left long before he ever knew. When I reached the bus station, I looked at my phone one last time. Dozens of missed calls. Hundreds of messages. Voicemails filled with apologies, arguments, desperation. I deleted them all, then powered the phone off. Not out of cruelty, but closure. There was nothing left for me here. No house. No role. No obligation. Not even a name on a mailbox. Only a past I no longer belonged to. When the bus pulled away from Seabrook for the last time, I didn't look back at the shrinking town. There is no need to revisit a chapter that has already been written, read, and closed. But even as miles stretched between me and the place where everything collapsed, I carried a strange peace with me. Not joy, not revenge, just peace. The kind that comes when a man finally chooses himself. The road out of Seabrook felt longer than it really was. Not because of distance, but because of everything I was finally leaving behind. Each turn of the wheels felt like a stitch closing an old wound. By the time the bus reached the highway, I felt lighter than I had in decades. I didn't have a destination in mind, only a direction, away. Away from humiliation, away from ungratefulness, away from a version of me that had lived for everyone but himself. I rode until the horizon changed colors, until the landscape grew unfamiliar. By late afternoon, the bus pulled into a small coastal town farther south, a place with no connection to my past, no memories, no faces that knew my pain. It was perfect. I stepped off the bus with my single suitcase and inhaled deeply. The ocean was close. I could smell its salt on the wind, hear the distant roar of waves. I felt something that I hadn't felt in years. Promise. Not the promise of wealth or comfort. Not the promise of family affection. But the promise of freedom. Of days that belonged to me and me alone. The first 2 nights, I stayed at a small inn near the shoreline. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with warm eyes, looked surprised when I asked for a room for at least a month. "Most people don't stay that long unless they're escaping something," she joked lightly. I smiled back. Maybe I am. She didn't pry. Bless her for that. The room was simple. A single bed, a small writing desk, and an old radiator that hummed in the evenings. The window overlooked the sea. At night, the tide whispered against the rocks like an old friend who finally learned to speak softly. I slept deeper than I had in years. In the mornings, I walked to the pier with a cup of coffee in hand. Fishermen pushed off in their boats, shouting jokes to each other, their laughter warm instead of cold. The kind of laughter that doesn't stab you in the back. No one here cared what I wore, how slowly I walked, or what my story was. To them, I was just another old man with a quiet look in his eyes. And for once, that was enough. I bought a small notebook in the general store and began writing again. Not letters to anyone, not journals filled with sorrow or questions. Just notes about the world around me. The shape of the waves. The color of the sky at dawn. The sound of children laughing on the beach. The way peace feels when it finally settles in your bones. I didn't write a single word about Adam. Not because I was trying to forget him, but because I was finally remembering myself. About a week into my new life, the innkeeper recommended a little rental cottage farther along the coast. Quiet man like you would appreciate the solitude, she said. She was right. It sat on a small rise overlooking a curve of beach, with a crooked mailbox and a garden overgrown with wild rosemary. The landlord was an elderly fisherman named Hector, who shook my hand with a grip strong enough to crush seashells. Rent's cheap if you don't mind the wind, he said. I've lived through worse, I replied. He nodded. Everyone has, old friend. But here the wind only takes what you're ready to let go. Poetic little town. I signed a 6-month lease. The first thing I did after moving in was open every window. The sea breeze swept through the rooms, washing away dust and the last traces of whoever lived there before me. Then I sat, in silence, in sunlight, in peace. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel needed. I didn't feel used. I didn't feel like anyone's shadow or stepping stone. I felt whole. Some afternoons, I walked into the small village square. Children played tag, running between market stalls. Elderly couples fed pigeons. Tourists browsed handmade crafts. A simple, honest life. One afternoon, I bought a carving knife from a local craftsman. My hands still remember the rhythm of building. Even if my heart had forgotten why I stopped, I began carving small things. A bird, a boat, a wooden spoon. No deadlines. No orders. No expectations. Just wood and silence and creation. The villagers noticed. A few asked if they could buy my carvings. I laughed the first time someone offered money for them. I'm not here to make a business, I said. But the man insisted. Things made with real hands always have value, he told me. Value. A word I hadn't associated with myself in a long time. So I sold a few pieces. Not for the cash. I didn't need it. But because it felt good to create again. Every night, I cooked simple meals. Rice, fish from a neighbor's morning catch. Vegetables I bought from the market. The silence wasn't lonely. It was steady. Constant. Kind. No insults. No footsteps pacing the hallway. No laughter that cut deeper than words. No sun spitting on the face of the man who raised him. Just me, and the sea, and the quiet life I should have chosen years earlier. Weeks turned into a month. A month turned into 2. I stopped checking the news. Stopped wondering about Adam's next move. Stopped replaying the humiliation in my head. Some wounds heal when you touch them again and again. But some only heal when you stop touching them altogether. In this little coastal town, surrounded by strangers who treated me better than my own blood had, I learned a truth I never expected. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you create when you finally choose yourself. But peace, as gentle as it is, doesn't erase the past. It just buries it under the soft sand of new beginnings. Because eventually, inevitably, echoes from the past catch up. And mine did. Not with anger, not with violence, but with a knock on my cottage door one quiet morning. The knock came on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning when the world felt too peaceful to be interrupted. The sea was calm, the sky soft and pale, and a warm breeze drifted to the cracked kitchen window. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee. Then, knock, knock, knock. Not frantic, not angry, just hesitant. The kind of knock a guilty heart makes when it finally gathers enough courage to seek the truth. I froze. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined it. No one knocked on my door here. People waved, chatted on the street, or called out from their porches. But they didn't knock, not unless they were delivering something or needed help. I set my coffee down, wiped my hands on a towel, and walked toward the door. With every step, the past crept closer. When I opened it, the breeze carried a familiar scent. Aftershave, the same brand I had bought him for Christmas years ago. Adam stood there, thinner, unshaven, eyes red from sleepless nights, clothes wrinkled, as if he had packed in a hurry or hadn't unpacked for days. He looked older than I remembered, but more than that, he looked human again. Not proud, not invincible, not cruel, just lost. He took one shaky breath. Dad. It wasn't demand this time. It wasn't even a greeting. It was a plea. I found you, he whispered, almost in disbelief. Yes, I said quietly. You did. He swallowed hard, his chin trembling. I've been searching for weeks. I thought you were dead. I'm alive, I replied, just absent. The word seemed to hit him harder than any anger could have. He lowered his gaze. Can I come in? My hand remained on the door. This moment was heavier than the years between us. I could have closed the door. I could have told him to leave. I could have protected my peace. But the truth is, peace doesn't mean shutting out the past. It means knowing you can face it without letting it destroy you. So I stepped aside. Come in. He entered slowly, as if the house might disappear if he walked too fast. His eyes scanned the small cottage, the wooden carvings on the table, the coffee mug, the window overlooking the sea. You live here? He asked softly. I do. It's peaceful. Yes, I said. It is. He stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets. The silence between us stretched long and heavy, but not hostile. Dad, I'm sorry. The words came out choked, like they had been trapped for years. I didn't say anything. He continued. I didn't come to defend myself. I know what I did. I know how deeply I hurt you. I know His voice broke. I know I became someone Mom would have hated. A trembling breath escaped him. When you left, everything fell apart. Sophia left. The kids, they look at me differently now. I lost my job. The house is gone. Everything just... His voice cracked again. Everything just collapsed. I finally spoke, my voice steady. It didn't collapse. It revealed itself. He blinked at me, confused. What do you mean? Your life wasn't built. It was held up by me, by my work, by my patience, by my silence. When I stepped away, it showed you what it truly was. He sank into the chair across from me, burying his face in his hands. I never meant to become this person. But you did. I know. We sat quietly for a moment. He wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. I want to fix things, he whispered. I want to be better. I want to earn your forgiveness. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see the boy I raised or the man who betrayed me. I saw someone standing at the edge of his own life, looking for a way back. But forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a bridge. And bridges take time to build. I don't hate you, Adam, I said softly. He froze. I never hated you, even after what you did. He swallowed hard. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past. I continued. It doesn't mean erasing what happened. And it doesn't mean giving you back what I took. He nodded slowly. I know. I didn't come for money, or the house, or anything like that. Then why did you come? He lifted his eyes that once held arrogance, now hollowed by consequence. I came because I lost everything, except the hope that maybe you still had room left in your heart for me. The silence that followed wasn't sharp this time. It was soft, painful, human. He wiped his nose, embarrassed. I'm not asking you to come back, or to fix anything. I just want a chance to be better. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of his words settle. Being better isn't about asking, I said calmly. It's about doing. He nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. He looked around the cottage again. "Dad, if I come back someday, not for help, but just to see you, will you open the door again?" It was the first question he had asked that carried no entitlement, only hope, and maybe fear. I considered it carefully, then said something honest. "That depends on the man you choose to be from this day forward." His breath hitched, but he accepted it, not with anger, not with argument, but with the quiet humility I had waited years to see. "Fair," he whispered. He stood slowly. "I'll leave now. I just needed to say sorry. And thank you. And I love you." I didn't answer those words. Not because I didn't feel them, but because for the first time, he needed to walk away with the weight of them, not the relief. He opened the door, paused, looked back once, then left. After he was gone, I sat alone in the cottage, listening to the waves. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel bitter. I felt something else entirely. Closure. The kind that doesn't come from revenge or escape, but from finally being seen. The morning after Adam left, the sea was quieter than usual, almost unnaturally calm, as if the world itself had paused to let me breathe. I sat outside the cottage with a cup of coffee warm in my hands, watching sunlight spill across the water like gold. For the first time since this entire ordeal began, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. An ending, a real one, not the angry kind, not the tragic kind, just the kind where a heavy door finally swings shut and another one quietly opens. I didn't know if Adam had taken the ferry back home, or if he was wandering along the coast trying to make sense of the life he had broken with his own hands. But I wasn't thinking about him with bitterness. I wasn't even thinking about him with anger. What I felt was distance. Clean distance. The kind that doesn't hurt. It just reminds you that every person has their own path, and you can't walk it for them. I stayed outside for a long time, listening to the soft rhythm of waves. Then I went inside, opened my notebook, and wrote the final entry I knew this chapter needed. Today I choose myself, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Over the next few weeks, I settled deeper into my new life. I made friends, real ones this time, people who valued stories, not status, kindness, not control. I cooked meals with Hector's fresh catch, traded carvings for fresh bread, and helped children fix kite strings on windy days. Nobody here knew the old version of me. Nobody knew the man who once lived on eggshells around his own son. Nobody knew how much pride I had swallowed for years. They only knew the quiet man in the cottage by the sea, the one who carved wooden birds, and smiled softly, and walked with his hands behind his back, like someone who finally understood the weight of peace. 3 months after Adam found me, I received a letter. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My chest tightened as I held it, unsure whether to open it or throw it away. But peace isn't about avoiding the past. It's about facing it without fear. I opened it. The first line made me sit down. "Dad, I won't come again until I am someone who deserves to." He wrote about therapy, about rebuilding himself piece by piece, about apologizing to people he'd lied to, misled, or mistreated, about trying to be a better father to Ben and Lila. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to come stay with me. He didn't even ask for forgiveness this time. He only asked for one thing. "I hope someday you'll be willing to have a coffee with me, even if it's just one." I closed the letter gently, not with sadness, not with relief, just acceptance. Because sometimes people don't need to come back into your life. Sometimes they just need to grow somewhere else, far enough away that they don't break you again. I placed the letter in a drawer, not out of sentiment, out of closure. That evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, turning the ocean into a sheet of orange fire, I walked along the beach with bare feet in sand. Kids were building sandcastles nearby, shouting with joy as waves threatened their creations. It reminded me of a long ago time, when I had carried Adam on my shoulders, and he had laughed like he owned the sky. But memories can be peace, not pain, if you know when to let them end. Halfway down the shore, I stopped and looked out the water, letting the wind push against me. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't hurting. I had simply stepped out of a story that no longer had a place for me, and created one where I finally did. One day, years later, maybe Adam and I will sit at a cafe table in some ordinary town and share a quiet conversation. No drama, no accusations, no begging. Just two men who finally understand that love without respect is just a slow form of destruction. Maybe that day will come. Maybe it won't. Both possibilities feel peaceful. Because the truth is simple. I didn't leave to punish him. I left to reclaim myself. And I did. In the end, people assume stories like mine end in triumph or revenge. But the real ending is far simpler and far deeper. It ends with a man who was mocked, spat on, humiliated, choosing silence, choosing dignity, and choosing a new life. Not because he wanted to hurt anyone, but because he finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can forgive people without ever returning to the place that broke you. If you like this story, please subscribe, leave a comment with where you're listening from, and share your thoughts. Your support helps these stories reach more people who might need them. And when you're ready for the next one, just click on the story waiting in the box beside this one. Thanks for listening.